This is a very important conference, seminar, very important matter. Both California and Quebec have legislative and statutory regulations on the book to reduce their carbon emissions. Both have targets looking at 1990 emissions, Quebec looking to get to 20% below those, and us to bring our carbon emissions down to that. And one important part of the portfolio of tackling that is going to be a cap and trade. An exciting thing happened then on January 1st of this year, which is we put into place between the government of California and the government of Quebec the first international North American cap and trade market. And that came into being then through negotiations and linkages between Quebec and California, and then officially came into place, the joint market came into place on January 1st. How important is this? Well, the last California auction had about $330 million worth of credits sold. So we're talking billions and billions of dollars. That will only increase in time. At Quebec, we're expecting, I think, things to really start ramping up as we move towards 2015. So this is exciting. This is important. It's important, obviously, financially, but it's important also for tackling greenhouse gases and their mitigation. Obviously, Quebec and California together are not going to solve the problem. This is the kernel. This is the condensation nuclei for which we hope to then see things gelling and see this market expand and see a greater integrated North American effort. And so it's my pleasure. Now, I would like to then introduce a representative from the Canadian Consul General's office, Nadia.
Good morning, everyone. Bonjour. Thank you so much for coming to this symposium this morning. Our new Consul General for Canada, James Villeneuve, will be speaking to you for a couple more minutes after lunch, but I just wanted to recognize the UCLA Institute of the Environment and Sustainability and Glenn McDonald and his team and all the other partners at UCLA, the Law School, the Center of Innovation, and the Emmett Center for Climate Change for putting this on because we are the government of Canada, and we are hoping to work with the United States on climate change, and we are already. But at a certain point, what we would really like to see is more talk between academics and researchers on both sides of the aisle, if you will, or not of the aisle, of the border. Symposiums like this are a chance for not only to raise awareness about what's happening, in this case between Quebec and California, but also to bring people together and hopefully work on some joint partnerships. And I would just like to underscore, as Glenn mentioned, there is this Canadian Studies program here at UCLA, but we also have other opportunities. We have the Canada-US Fulbright system, and actually here in this building at CNSI, there are 2 Canadian chairs. So for those of you that are professors and researchers, there are lots of opportunities to further research with Canadian researchers and partners. So please, I would be happy to talk to you afterwards. But really looking forward to hearing what happens today. We'll be bringing back notes back to our government office back in Ottawa. So we are, just take note, this is serious. And look forward to hearing what the conclusions are. So with that, have a good conference. And I would like to invite my colleague, I will call him Alain Houde, who's the head of the Quebec Delegation Office here in Los Angeles, to say a few words.
Good morning. First of all, I would like to sincerely thank the UCLA Department Institute of the Environment and Sustainability, and in particular, Madeleine and Glenn for the very exciting conference they've prepared for us today. The Quebec Government Office in Los Angeles is part of a network of 26 offices all around the world. The Los Angeles office is led by a delegate appointed by the government. As such, we officially represent the Quebec government near the 13 western states here in the United States. The services we provide are in the areas of economy, education, culture, and public affairs. Our objective is to promote trade and build economic ties, to stimulate institutional and scientific collaboration, and to share knowledge and promote a better mutual understanding on issues of a common interest. To achieve the latter, we strongly value conferences like the one we are having today. It is one of the most effective ways to share best practices and to better understand challenges we are facing, in this case, the climate change, and to foster collaborations. That's why the Quebec government is proud to offer a grant program to American scholars, the Quebec United States University Grant Programs. The program is aimed at encouraging projects in Quebec and at US universities in the humanities and social sciences. The main purpose of the project will be to promote better understanding of Quebec or its relations with the United States. Grants are offered to professors and researchers, to master's and doctoral level students, for major academic initiatives, for a guest professor from Quebec, for conference and guest speaker program, to support program for the development of courses on Quebec. For more information on the Quebec office, do not hesitate to talk with me or my colleagues here, Daniel Paquette, Economic Department Director, and Frédéric Tremblay. Is he here? Frédéric Tremblay there. So we'll be pleased to give you more information. You'll not be surprised if I tell you that climate change is one of the main issues our collaboration with California is based on. The stakes are too high for not taking strong actions. Question is not anymore if climate change is happening, if weather is warming, or if there is more unusual, severe, or seasonal weather events. We are now at a time of taking action. Since the beginning of the new millennium, Quebec is strongly engaged in facing this challenge. When Californians were voting the AB 32, Quebec was adopting its first strategy to fight and adapt to climate change. Early in the process, it was clear that this fight couldn't be won without partnering with those who were and are still determined to lead the way. California is among them. It was then a natural shift to work with the Golden State. After successful auctions in both California and Quebec, after the linkage of the two markets, and according to the interests other potential partners have shown into the market, we are confident that the California-Quebec market has a bright future, and that it will not only result in a decrease in carbon emission, but that it will also be instrumental in building a new green economy and in creating the wealthy jobs of the future. I cannot conclude my remarks without congratulating a colleague who's invested so much of his time, of his efforts, in making the Quebec carbon market and its linkage to the California market happen. Last week in San Francisco took place the 2014 edition of Navigating the American Carbon World.
I think it's worth noting actually two stories in today's news, in particular in the New York Times. The first is, of course, the release of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change Fifth Assessment on Adaptation, which is a pretty grim report about the crises that the planet is going to face over the coming century and the certainty with which that panel believes these really dire consequences are going to occur. The second isn't really related to climate change, but it is related to Canada and the United States. And that's a great story that I commend to all of you, although I haven't finished reading it yet, by Michael Lewis about investment banks, a Canadian investment bank and U.S. investment banks prior to the 2008 financial crash, and the different cultural kind of connection to risk and taking and to the subprime mortgage market. It's both incredibly interesting and also a great reflection on kind of Canadian versus U.S. culture in the financial markets. And that seems relevant today to me, both the climate change adaptation story and the story on Canadian-U.S. relationships, because this is a panel that's really a promising story about climate change, as opposed to the incredibly grim story that, again, greeted us this morning with headlines from the IPCC report. And it's a really promising and wonderful story, both about regulatory chutzpah, so something that the Canadians, I think, actually represented in the financial crisis, and I'm very proud to say California is leading here in the United States on the climate change effort, and that is to really aggressively figure out and model for the rest of the world how we can tackle the greenhouse gas emissions that are warming the planet. And then to do so in cooperation with a partner who is also aggressively tackling climate change, a province in Canada, Quebec, and to show the world that we can have international cooperation and that we can link markets in a way that really ought to help demonstrate not only that we can reduce emissions, but that we can do so cost effectively and cooperatively in a way that takes advantage of larger markets that, at least in theory, ought to bring down the overall price of complying with greenhouse gas emissions efforts to reduce those emissions. I'm going to stop here because what you have in store for the next 45 minutes is hearing from the two leading voices on linkage between Quebec and Canada. We're really fortunate to have from both California and Quebec the two people who are most instrumental in making sure that these linkages work. So their bios are in front of you. I'm going to butcher Jean-Yves Benoit's name because I speak no French. But what, did I say it okay? Yeah. But we'll start with him and then move to Michael Gibbs to hear about the way in which these linkages are working, successes, problems, the past, present, and future, as the title of the panel tells us.
Thank you. I may butcher a few names as well. Good morning. First, I'd like to thank Madeleine for organizing this event, for inviting us. Madeleine and I gotta say her full team, Cara, I know you've worked on this. I don't know the other ones, but thank you for inviting us. On this conference pertaining to the first linkage of two carbon market, first international linking of two carbon market managed by some national government. This cooperation between Quebec, California has spurred a lot of attention. Well, on Quebec, not only here, but on the two of our two provinces, state around the world. We're certainly grateful for, I gotta say, this attention that we are having internationally, but I must tell you that this linking initiative is not the first step that we undertook in Quebec. Actually, 2 decades ago, successive Quebec governments have made the issue of climate change one of our priorities. It all started in about 1992 when a first motion from our National Assembly declared the province of Quebec linked to the Kyoto Protocol, though acknowledging the threat of climate change and the fact that we must act. Like all the other motions that were adopted by our National Assembly, this one was adopted unanimously by all political parties confounded. Right now, an election campaign is running in Quebec in April 7th, in about a week. We're gonna have a new premier, a new minister, and I gotta say, I'm not afraid at all that our action on climate change will continue, whoever wins the leadership. So in that sense, I'm really happy to be part of that, working for the government of Quebec. Why did we act on climate change? I must admit, we had early warnings in Quebec. In the 1990s, we had a massive rainstorm. It rained a lot for 3 days. Basically, that flooded the beautiful region of Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean. We lost homes, villages, roads. A few years later, it was followed by quite a big ice storm. The city of Montreal, the biggest city in Quebec, lost power for days. And all the suburb, myself included, we lost it for weeks. We had another rainstorm, well, this year, actually. So we had early warning, and those are just a few examples that really increase the awareness about the importance of acting on climate change. So the first strategic move from the government of Quebec was made, I say, in 2001. We launched a research center called the Uranos Consortium that encouraged scientific working on the issues of climate change. Today, about 100 scholars have joined this consortium. Basically, well, within a few years, Uranos were able to draw a picture of what is coming. And the outlook, I gotta say, is not too cheerful for Quebec. Heat waves, floods in the summer, less snow, frequent thaws in the winter. You must be surprised. Some of us actually like winter. I know I do. And some regions, their economic well-being is tackled of having a good winter. So climate change is an issue for us. With that picture in hand, our government really decided that staying in our comfort zone, our day-to-day decision, was not an option, and that we had to reduce and adapt to climate change. So I will start with mitigation. On the mitigation track, gotta say we started very early on the right track. Going back probably 40 years ago, a decision was made to really put all our effort in developing hydroelectricity. As a result, today, 98% of our electricity is from renewable resources. We're about 96% hydro, 2 to 3% wind, and then the rest, about 1% thermal and thermal off-grid. In 2010, we had 200,000 tons of emission from the electricity sector, which is nothing. We also had, well, okay, so we don't have any emission in the electricity sector, so where do we act in order to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions? We have to focus in 3 sectors: industries, heating, buildings, housing, and mostly transport, which is probably the most difficult sector to tackle at the moment. So the government, I'm going back in about 2008, there was a strong willingness to send a price signal in the economy and to take action to fight climate change. But to take action, we needed money. So in 2007, the government of Quebec was the first government in North America to put in place a carbon levy to tackle greenhouse gas emission. First to send a signal, but then to bring back about $1.2 billion over the 2006-2012 period and dedicate all of this money to fight climate change. We're about 1/10 of California's economy. So that would make about $12 billion California size. What did we do with it? So basically, in 2006, the government of Quebec launched its first comprehensive climate action plan. We had some before, but the real comprehensive one came in 2006 with initiative to promote, with policies and programs to promote fuel switching, switching to less intensive greenhouse gas types of energy, investing in public transit, cycling path, electrical vehicle, energy efficiency, clean energy, and to use more freight to transport goods. We also put some money in public awareness and action campaigns. As a result, our industry have reduced their dependence on imported oil. Sorry. They have increased their profit and became more competitive. Public usage has increased 12% since 2006. And according to preliminary data, the next greenhouse gas inventory should tell us that we achieve our 2012 mitigation goal of reducing by 6% our emission below 1990. With no mitigation to be done in the electricity sector, this is an achievement for us. In 2008, another milestone decision was made. We had a carbon levy in place. We had a climate change action plan. That worked well, but to significantly reduce our greenhouse gas emission to the level we have to do so in order to prevent too much impact on our climate, we definitely needed a stronger, more robust tool. So we looked at what was out there, and we found a partnership on the West Coast called the Western Climate Initiative. I grant you the name does not apply well for us, being an eastern province, but I guess we're west of something all the time. So what attracted us to the Western Climate Initiative? Basically, it was the intention to implement an economy-wide market-based solution and complementary policy to tackle climate change. Right beside us, there was the RGGI, 9 states. That has put in place a cap-and-trade system, but they only target electricity since we don't have any emission. It was not a real good solution for us. Although we admire the work RGGI is doing, it was not a good tool for us. So we joined the Western Climate Initiative, and from the start, we put all our effort to make it a success. So maybe a little history of our legal activities that brought us to, well, that brought me here today. So in 2008, we joined the Western Climate Initiative. I gotta say the first thing we had to do is get the enabling power to implement a cap-and-trade system. Most of the government don't have the power to do it. So we brought a legislation, draft legislation, that modifies the Environmental Quality Act to enable the government to implement by regulation a cap-and-trade system. So really the basic of our cap-and-trade system is embedded in our law at the moment. Then in 2009, what we did once we had the enabling power, we adopted our 2020 mitigation goal. After a public consultation, through a motion by the National Assembly, the Quebec government decided to reduce by 20% its emission below 1990 by 2020. So quite an ambitious goal. It was at the time the equivalent of the European Union, again with the fact that we don't have any emission in our electricity sector. Therefore, the work is a little bit more, will be harder for us to accomplish this level of ambition. Then we had the task of drafting the regulation. We initially adopted our regulation in 2011. We changed our regulation in 2012 to harmonize with California. We changed it, we tweaked it again in 2013. And then in 2013, we basically drafted, completed a linking agreement with California. Again, for us, this linking agreement is an international agreement by the law of the Ministry of International Relations. Therefore, the text of the agreement had to be presented to our National Assembly, and a motion to adopt the text had to be adopted. Again, it was adopted unanimously by all parties confounded. Something that quite struck me, I watched the debate. And for the first time, all political parties were only throwing flowers at the government, telling them how important it is to act to reduce greenhouse gas emission, and how linking with California and eventually with other partners was a good thing for our economy and for the environment. So this is another sign how dedicated the government of Quebec is on acting to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So our cap and trade system is now in place. The first compliance period began January 1st, 2013. At the moment, we are under our narrow scope covering industry and electricity, including electricity imports. Beginning January 1st of next year in 2015, we're going to blend the fuels, getting to our broad scope. And it's going to be 85% of Quebec's greenhouse gas emission that will be covered by this economic tool, the cap and trade system, making it really the key instrument to drive mitigation and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The cap and trade will also bring money. As it was mentioned, we're going to be auctioning some allowances. At the moment, we had 2 auctions that brought $55 million. That goes in the Green Fund. All of it is reinvested on climate change. By 2020, it's going to be about $3 billion of revenues that is going to be generated by the cap and trade system, by the auctioning of allowances. All of this will be reinvested in the fight against climate change. How does it work in Quebec? In 2007, we adopted the Sustainable Development Act, again, an act that changed the Quality Environmental Act to really take a switch on sustainable development in Quebec. One of the things that was created is the Green Fund. It's a dedicated fund for the environment. And all the economic instruments that are put in place by the Ministry of Environment or by the government, the revenues goes into that fund and they are dedicated to environment. So for the government, it's not possible to use that money for anything else but to fight climate change. So that $3 billion will be all dedicated to climate change. What do we have to do to achieve our 2020 mitigation goal? First thing, the first sector we have to tackle is transport. It represents 43% of our emissions. So about 2/3 of that $3 billion will be dedicated to aim at the transport sector. Among other things, subsidize public transit, electrification of public transit, but also of private fleets and personal cars, improving energy efficiency of freight as well. The rest of it will be basically dedicated to other sectors. Industry is one of them. We are putting a cap and trade system. We are requesting industry to reduce again its greenhouse gas emission, although our industrial sector is already at about 12-15% below 1990. Our large covered entities that are regulated under the cap and trade system are already about 23% below 1990. And this is not due to reduction of production. The output has increased since 1990. It's really efficiency. So asking them to do, again, more, we're going to have some money to help them bring new technologies, energy efficiency, not only for industry, but for housing as well. We have some money on adaptation to climate change. And again, we have some money to tackle public awareness. Why did we link with California? Because they were the only WCI partners to implement a cap and trade? No. Well, basically, why did Quebec decided to link with other jurisdictions? First, a cap and trade. The broader the scope of the cap and trade, the broader the economy, the number of tons we are covering, the more efficient it is. But most likely, Quebec is a small economy. Doing it on our own, only in Quebec, is not the most efficient way of doing it. So having some partnership, a broader market, and hopefully other provinces, other states will join us, is crucial for us. Quebec alone, we're not big enough to sustain a cap and trade or a market, a carbon market on its own. We need partners. We need more liquidity on our market. I went with that one. I think I'm going to stop here for this morning. Basically, our market is now linked. I will let Michael speak. What's for us in the future? Complete our linking. At the moment, allowances, our covered entities are able to trade allowances with California covered entities. What does the linking mean for us is basically that we recognize for compliance in Quebec the instruments that are issued by the government of California, by the Air Resources Board. And similarly, the Air Resources Board recognize the compliance unit issued by the government of Quebec. So this was a first step. The next step we are aiming for is to have joint auction. So our market will be fully fungible, fully linked. We expect to accomplish that before the end of the year. Once that step is done, we're going to be looking for other partners. I got to say the PCC, that was the memorandum under the PCC that was signed, I guess it's last October, is a fairly good sign that at least 2 of our old WCI partners are back at the table. Thank you.
Michael.
Good morning. And Jean-Yves, it's an honor again to serve on a panel with you this morning. I must say that Quebec has been just an amazing partner through our adventure to implement cap and trade and to demonstrate and actually link our programs. So what I want to talk about this morning is a little bit about why we focused on cap and trade and why we focused on linkage. This afternoon, we're on another panel where I'd like to talk a little bit more about the specifics of how we're linking, what the status is, and what some of the challenges are. But for this morning, I'd like to talk a little bit about why and why we've gone down this path. Following enactment of AB 32 in 2006, it was interesting that 2006 was also an important year for Quebec. The Air Board was on the hook to create a scoping plan which would lay out all the steps that we would take to achieve our 2020 emissions goal to return to 1990 level of emissions. And that was published in 2008, and as part of that scoping plan, which had an entire portfolio of programs, one of them was a cap and trade program. And I, along with many others, worked hard to ensure that we could bring that program to fruition and to ensure that the program that we created, in fact, could link with other similar programs. So why did we do that? Why cap and trade and why linking? Cap and trade certainly attracts its share of controversy, and linking only adds to controversy. And it would certainly have been a lot easier just to focus on direct regulations, technology standards and the like, which were also in the scoping plan. And it's difficult enough to launch a major new initiative, aggressively reducing greenhouse gas emissions in our state, without also introducing a market-based program. Not only that, a market-based program covering 85% of our emissions, nearly our entire economy. How could we have made it more difficult? So what happened? Well, we have had representatives from our manufacturing industries criticizing our every move, local environmental justice groups suing to stop the program, a ballot proposition to suspend the program, legislative staff actively questioning the whole idea, a lawsuit over the authority to auction allowances, and most recently, I'm sure you've read about the oil companies trying to get out of the program for their fuels entirely. All that, and we haven't even mentioned linking yet. We've had the confirmation of an Air Board member postponed over concerns about linking activities, legislation enacted imposing new requirements for linking, not to mention new twice-a-year reporting requirements to the legislature about everything we're doing on cap and trade and linking. So why? Why are we doing all this? And I think the answer is pretty simple. We're fighting the good fight. The good fight for climate protection. We're making progress on a critical problem that requires timely and meaningful action. Action by the state of California, action by other states and provinces, action by our countries, and obviously action globally. So if in our corner of the world we can move the needle a little, even just a bit, we can contribute, we can make a difference. I think it's important to recognize that in California, our efforts would not have been possible without some pretty effective and impressive leadership. Vocal legislative champions, we've had the critics, but we've also had important champions. Our prior governor, Governor Schwarzenegger, our current governor, Governor Brown, have been instrumental in bringing this to fruition, along with our chairman of our Air Board, Mary Nichols. Business leaders, innovators, community groups, and ultimately the voters throughout California have all made it possible. So that's the good side, I think. So with all this leadership and support, we still have to ask, why cap and trade? Again, there's lots of ways to get at this, why cap and trade? I think we have economists here today who no doubt could explain this better than I, but I'll just say that credible pricing of greenhouse gas emissions is an important tool to motivate investment, improve operations, and influence our consumption decisions throughout the entire economy. And having a firm and enforceable cap on emissions ensures that we can reliably achieve our emissions targets. Greenhouse gas emissions are interwoven in just about everything we do. Driving here today, keeping the lights on, transporting water throughout the state. So pricing is a key component of this portfolio of programs to help chart the path to achieve our emissions goals. And because pricing helps make the path more affordable, it increases our ability to actually solve the problem, to actually reduce emissions. So that's why we focus on pricing. It's a powerful tool, and it works. So if pricing is so great, why is there so much opposition to this type of program? Well, I think there's a couple things to note here. First of all, pricing is completely transparent. Everyone can see the price of carbon. You can look it up. We see it from the auctions that we've held. It makes this cost very open. And in that sense, I think it makes cap and trade a very honest program. Everyone can see what we're all paying. There's nothing hidden. It's not some complicated thing about equipment that has to be installed that no one really knows what it is or how it costs. It's a price that's public, that everyone can see, that everyone is paying to emit greenhouse gases in California. So naturally, this upsets those who are vested in carbon-intensive activities, because now it's a cost they have to pay. But in my discussions in California, internationally, with other jurisdictions, it's just as important to note, I think, that no jurisdiction, no one wants to be the only one with a carbon price, or a carbon price that's higher than the others that may be faced by their competition. It's really best if we can all use pricing together in a harmonized way across states, provinces, and countries. And here's where linked programs really come into the equation. When cap and trade programs link, like California and Quebec have done, the linked programs converge their carbon prices. So we end up with the same price. the same price. This is a powerful outcome because it eliminates the concern about having a price that's higher than your competitor. So linking is really the key to make pricing carbon work across a larger geography. Recently, there's been discussion about carbon taxes as an alternative path, and certainly carbon taxes is a very effective pricing mechanism, and there's much to be said in favor of that. But I think history would indicate that the likelihood of being able to converge carbon taxes so that we're all facing similar prices, the likelihood of converging those taxes across many jurisdictions is quite limited. I think of the attempts to converge tariffs under the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, and then under the World Trade Organization, trying to converge tariffs across all different product types and countries. And I suppose progress can be made painfully and slowly and incompletely. And we could look at varying approaches to taxes across state lines here in the US. Sales taxes, income taxes, property taxes are all different, even though we all have a common interest in having enough revenue to run our governments and to promote economic growth in our states. So those are not comforting examples of how we could converge carbon prices when we use taxes. On the other hand, linked cap and trade programs provide a path with a promise of enabling carbon pricing to be undertaken on a large scale and to converge to a common price, or at least prices that are very close to each other. So with this as the basic idea, we embarked on this adventure. AB 32 specifically directs ARB to consult with other states, the federal government, and other national governments, and to facilitate the development of integrated and cost-effective regional, national, and international greenhouse gas reduction programs. Through these efforts, ARB and others can work together to create this model and promote its use. So as Jean-Yves mentioned, we worked with the Western Climate Initiative to develop a program design that would work well, not just for California, but for a broad set of states and provinces. We collaborated with the RGGI states, held discussions with Midwest states that were briefly interested, and we were able to build on the best of what came before, and we hope contribute to the continued advancement of the design of these programs. So throughout the process, there were several principles that helped guide our efforts. First was to design a program that will reliably and cost-effectively reduce greenhouse gas emissions. In other words, a program that really works. And that was, of course, the most important. Second was to design a program that works not only for California, but as I said, for the broadest possible group of states and provinces and countries. Again, with linkage in mind and the need to promote the program more broadly, designing a program that works for the broadest possible group of states and provinces was very important. So in this area, our collaboration with Quebec, with the Western Climate Initiative and others was critical. And third, we wanted to ensure that the program was expandable. California is large enough with diverse enough emission sources that we can, as California, implement an effective cap and trade program. But most other states and provinces in North America are not large enough. As Jean-Yves mentioned, Quebec alone would have some difficulty doing a market-based cap and trade program. It's just not big and diverse enough, but California is, and California could get the ball rolling and join with Quebec, join with others, who would then be able to use this tool, which is so effective. So we had to create a model that others could not only use, but actually join together. And when other states and provinces join, it also helps us, it helps California, not only by promoting climate action, but also by broadening and deepening our own program. So I would say that among the jurisdictions with whom we've been working, Quebec stands out as tremendously effective and a constructive partner. Like California, Quebec has a strong tradition of environmental leadership. They bring creativity and commitment to all of our discussions and help us keep the broad view. I don't think we could have hoped for a better partner throughout this journey to get to this point. Although we have done much, there is a lot more work to do. California is part of the Western electric grid, and we would be in a better position if we had all the states and provinces in the grid in the program together, or at least more of them. The Pacific Coast Collaborative that Jean-Yves also mentioned, the PCC, is now active again, and there are hopeful signs from other states here in the West to consider these programs and to possibly, down the line, consider joining with us in the programs. We are still in the early stages of implementation. The first compliance event, the first time that covered entities have to turn in allowances and comply with the program in that respect, in California is this fall. And then next year, the first complete compliance event. No doubt we have much to learn. But at this point, I would just sum up by saying there is much promise. There's strong interest among more states. And as part of the good fight, our task at this time is to deliver on that promise. So I'll stop there, and thank you very much.
So we have time for a few questions, and I think I'll take the moderator's prerogative and ask the first one. This might be a delicate question, but I'll ask it anyway. I suspect that given that Quebec is about 1/10 of the size of California, that the benefits to Quebec economically from linking are actually much bigger than they are for California, right? The California price, given that there's a very diverse base of emitters in California, I suspect that allowances will be cheaper for Canadian regulated entities than they would be had California and Quebec not linked, but that the effect of linking on prices for California entities is probably pretty small. So I'm wondering if that's right, and if I'm right, Michael, if you want to address, why link beyond the, is this mostly about a symbolic linkage or a way to show other provinces and states that they can join in, or is there more of a benefit to California than what I'm seeing?
Sure. Thanks, Anne. It's an important question, and I would answer it in two different ways. First, just on the specifics of the linking itself. Does it help California just as a link? And I think the answer to that is yes. So although California is a larger program in terms of emissions and emitters, more allowances than is Quebec, linking with Quebec does enlarge the program. It also increases, I would say, the diversity by adding more and different industries and a different part of North America. So when you look at creating a program of this type and you're looking at trying to ensure that you have enough diverse emitters and enough variability and the opportunities to reduce emissions to really get the efficiency benefits of this pricing mechanism, you can look across the different types of jurisdictions with whom you link and try to assess what value they bring to that proposition. And linking with Quebec clearly adds to that diversity and adds to the geographic diversity as well. If we were to link with another small state that is exactly like California, experiencing the exact same weather, for example, then we wouldn't see all those benefits. So I think that's clearly just one aspect of linking that creates a benefit for the California program. Beyond the actual benefits of the actual link, there clearly is demonstrating the model of linkage, which is important to us. As I was saying, we want to expand climate action, we want to demonstrate that the program works, and we want to demonstrate that you can join the program through this linking mechanism. As I think we'll talk a little more this afternoon, there's a variety of ways to link, and this is one. And this is a pretty intensive, close linkage, and we think this works for us, and we think that this would be a good model. And demonstrating that, we hope, will put us on a path so that other states can join in as well. So I think it's more than symbolic, because it's actually demonstrating the functioning system. I would say, as you look at other states and their interest and ability to adopt programs of this type, there's a variety of things on the checklist that you have to go through. One of which Is it a good program? Does it work? Can we do it? Doing this program, linking with Quebec, helps check that box, demonstrating it's a good program, it works, you can do it.
It's pretty comprehensive answer. I may add just two little things. The first one, there is a benefit of linking with California, with anyone else who wants to tackle climate change. Whether there is 1 ton emitted in California, in Quebec, in China, in Australia, it has the same impact on our climate. Unlike a local pollutant, climate change is global. So by the fact that we are acting in Quebec, California is acting, that we are linking together, we are sending a signal to other governments to join us to act, this is already a real positive sign. The other advantage of linking, even though we are small, California can sustain a cap and trade on its own. Trading's going to happen between Quebec, California, large emitters, large industrial corporations. We are creating a dialogue between Quebec's industries, California's industries, not only heavy industrial ones, but environmental industries. The broader our market will be, the more communication and links will happen, the more probable people are going to get together to try and find solutions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, to reduce the cost of mitigation by developing new technologies and new ways of doing things. We are already experiencing it. Some large covered entities in California are part of the same international organization as covered entities in Quebec. Therefore, it's going up one level. It doesn't only stay at the California's region or within Quebec or within Canada and within the US. It's getting international. We are getting the decision makers internationally to think about the issue and to try to bring solutions. So yes, there's definitely a benefit of linking.